I guess, Debbie, you sent out minutes and I just had a quick edit to one sentence. Did you see that?
I did. So I did not realize that they had not yet approved the energy task force, the task force for the energy transition. So I put still pending in front of that and then put approval from council. I should send that back out. I'm sorry. I changed that. Did anybody else happen to have a chance to look at it? I'm sorry it was so late in the day.
I did not.
Did not?
All right, let me resend the updated version.
So we can approve that post meeting or at the, yeah, we could approve it through email
Okay.
while we do that. We get 4 out of 7 approvals. That'll be good to pass it. From 2, maybe 3. I wanted to give Agam a chance to bring back the topic of the smoking ordinance and just have another discussion about it with us. I kind of feel that we ought to wait for Karen and possibly Rick to be involved just to get their input on it. But I'd like to hear what you have to tell us, Agam, and then we can discuss it.
Yeah. Hey, folks, can you see my screen? I'm sharing right now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just wanted to kick off in the midst of a heat wave with this trivia. I guess you guys won't believe it, but Bill, you might now recognize this. There's a place called Verkhoyansk, north of the Arctic Circle in way eastern Siberia, that was at 100.4 Fahrenheit 3 weeks ago.
Oh my
You know,
God.
that's now typically one of the coldest spots in the world with temperatures at 50 below, 90 below in the winter. You know, this week, if you go to Weather Channel, it's trending into the 80s. There's another spot that's, 6-7 miles north of the Arctic Circle that's at 85. Typically, there wouldn't be more than, 50s or 40s at this time of the year. So something crazy going on with the heat on the planet, especially in the Arctic. So just wanted to throw it out to the environmental group here that I think at some point we need action and we need something soon.
Thank you, Agam, for that reminder. I'll tell you, I didn't realize it was hitting the Arctic like this. That's scary.
Yeah, 100.4. It was hotter than Vegas in the Arctic.
Oh
And this is in the Washington Post, so
Mhm.
yeah, I don't think I'm making it up. All right, thanks. Let's move on to the topic. Thanks to everyone for their comments on the memo. This really is about proposing township action on the nuisance of secondhand smoke in townhomes, condos, and apartments. So there are 2 key things to keep in mind. One, that we're talking about a nuisance. So let's just accept that cigarette smoking is legal where it is, and it's fine to buy and smoke cigarettes, and it's fine to smoke. But we're talking of a nuisance, and secondly, pretty narrow in scope. So in the setting of townhomes, condos, and apartments. So that's the topic of the memo. I want to put the township's definition of nuisance out there in case you guys find it useful. In the township, we define nuisance as a public nuisance affecting health. Now nothing meets this better than cigarette smoke, but let's get to that in a couple of slides.
And Agam, do you have that written out, the township definition? Could you put that on a slide next time?
You mean on the memo? Yeah, it's written out in the memo.
Yep. No, that's good. Just so it's kind of spelled out, so they don't have to go look it up on the website. It'll be right in front of them.
Yeah. So Bill, so remind me, what's your comment? Do I change something here or?
No. I was just saying we've already got a definition of nuisance, public health. So I'd just like to see the text on a second slide or a reference slide.
Okay. Yep. Okay. Thanks. I don't have to preach to the choir. Everybody knows how dangerous secondhand smoke is. In fact, it's so dangerous that the debate now has moved on to third-hand smoke,
Oh my
which
God.
means cigarette smoke that sticks onto furniture, fixtures, clothes, etc., that is also dangerous. Nonetheless, I'll just reiterate that secondhand smoke is a killer, takes a lot of lives every day, very sadly. And this proposal is about protecting innocent citizens from involuntary exposure to cigarette smoke right where they live. And that really is a public health imperative. So that's the last bullet. I learned, and this was a little bit eye-opening to me, that there's no safe level of exposure. Now, this comes from the US Surgeon General, which means that if somebody gets into a debate of, hey, one cigarette's okay, secondhand smoke from one cigarette's okay, but 5 cigarettes is worse, you can't really titrate dose. Even a little bit of exposure is dangerous and deadly, especially for people with underlying health conditions. And more true today than ever, given that we're in the midst of a pandemic that starts off by attacking the lungs.
Mhm.
This is the problem statement. And folks, please feel free to stop me. I've got about 7 slides, so not more than 10 minutes. My aim is to keep this laser focused on message. So you can jump in now, or we can have a Q&A afterwards. The problem is imagine you're in Plymouth Township living in a townhouse, condo, or apartment. And Andy, thanks for suggesting apartments, because that helped me broaden the scope a little bit. And you share a party wall with your neighbor. Party wall is a legal term. Basically, it means that you have a common boundary, a property boundary. And units are so close that you can almost shake hands. I know I can with my next door neighbor, either from the front stoop or the rear deck. In apartments, actually, you might even have drywall that's more porous than a party wall.
Yeah.
So, and in apartments, you might even share HVAC systems, could be worse. So if your neighbor is out smoking, either from within the unit or from outside the unit, that smoke will invade your property. If your doors are open and windows are open through those openings, if it's an apartment through HVAC systems, if you're working in the garage, doing woodwork and doing some maintenance, it can get into the garage. And, it might even just envelope your front door. If you're sitting and having a peaceful evening on your deck, it could envelope the deck. And all that leaves you is just an innocent resident trapped in your own home with nowhere to escape. That's a nuisance. Now, once that cigarette smoke enters your unit, it is very hard to clean it out after the fact. You don't know when the person's going to go out smoking, so you can't proactively remedy it by putting a big fan or whatever. That's just not practical. And after the fact, once you find out that smoke's drifting or wafting into or around your unit, there's nothing that you can do to get it off your clothes and sofas and fixtures. So what could you do at the moment? You pretty much are at the mercy of an HOA, which could be ineffective, incompetent, ignorant, or all of the above. And you have 2 options. You can go neighbor versus neighbor and sue your neighbor, or you can sell your house and move out. Even though moving to a different community, townhome, condo, apartment, is no guarantee that you won't face it again, because it just takes one nuisance neighbor to trigger this. So I'll just re-emphasize, this is not against the act of smoking or not against the status of a person, smoker versus not. It's against the nuisance. Now let's put this in perspective with the nuisance. If that same neighbor was, he got his drums out and he was playing his drum set on the driveway, making loud noise, under the existing ordinance, you could call the cops who could come in and referee the situation. Or if somebody was, lighting fireworks in an unsafe fashion, you could call the cops, but for cigarette smoke, which actually kills, amazingly, there's a big gap, because even though it affects multiple people, including adults and kids in adjacent multifamily dwellings, and almost perfectly meets the township's definition of nuisance, there's no remedy. So the action that we're proposing is leading us to a couple of different options. One, the township can implement a new ordinance prohibiting smoking in townhomes, condos, and apartments. And potentially, such a new ordinance would combine the existing principles of enforcing nuisance restrictions on private property. And I'll highlight private property because townhomes, condos, and apartments are private properties on which the township already enforces nuisances in other instances. So you're combining that precedent with recognizing the public health harmful effects of tobacco smoke. So that's option one. The second option is we have the existing nuisance definition, and we just propose that the council recognize secondhand cigarette smoke under the existing nuisance definition. So nothing needs to be done here except recognizing it as a nuisance. And even a small step like this would provide a lifeline for victims, because you could then pick up the phone and call the cops who could step in and referee the situation. You wouldn't want to confront a neighbor. You know, what if you were a senior citizen? What if you had kids? What if you just didn't want to talk to a neighbor about his smoking habit? The cops would come in and say, look, this is a nuisance. You can smoke where you want to smoke, but if this becomes a nuisance, it could be a ticket or something like that. And that could provide a real remedy. Now, if you just look at the facts, action number one or option number one is the most bulletproof. It's a very clean way to regulate the nuisance of secondhand smoke, but it's also the most effortful. So, it's not easy to get a new ordinance through. There's a process to it. Option two is actually the straightest line or the shortest way to coming up with an action. It's almost that you let people make their own decisions. You let them smoke, but make sure that, hey, if this is a nuisance, you could be in violation. So when I drafted this, I thought of 4 things that could come as pushback from either the council or the solicitor, or not even pushback, but questions, which I've listed on this slide. One thing could be, hey, the township doesn't regulate nuisances on private property, even though there's a complete and total ban on cigarette smoking on township and public property. You take GPCC Park, you take the township building, you take the GPCC building, all of that, cigarette smoking is banned. Philadelphia banned cigarette smoking on private property like bars and restaurants. And the response to that would be that actually there are examples of nuisances on private property which the township does regulate. And I gave you 2 examples of loud noise. Another one might be if a neighbor you live in a townhome and the neighbor is just, sunbathing nude on a driveway. I mean, that's obscenity for which you'd call the cops right away. That's a nuisance. So there's precedent for that. The second question could be, I think there's overreach for the township. The state law preempts munis or townships that are not class 1 or class 2 cities from enacting such an ordinance. I don't believe that state law preempts the township in the matter of cigarette smoking. Pennsylvania has a 2008 Clean Indoor Air Act. And also, if you take option 2, where you're just recognizing cigarette smoke as a nuisance under an existing ordinance, you don't need a new ordinance anyway, so there's no new legislation. The third pushback could be just punting it to an HOA or a landlord, which is really not where you want to go, because you don't want to be at the mercy of HOAs that could be ineffective or worse, vicious in abating this nuisance. And secondly, you don't want to bounce from an HOA to an HOA getting different actions on the same problem within the same township on an issue that makes universal common medical and legal sense. And finally, somebody may say, hey, don't we have a right to smoke? Look, in most cases, in townhomes, condos, and apartments, you're on common or limited common property, but that doesn't even matter. There is no such thing as right to smoke. There's no legal, fundamental, or constitutional right that's enshrined as a right to smoke. There's no such liberty that people have that they can smoke when they want. And therefore, smoking's been severely restricted, and more so in the current age, by regulation, ordinance, and law. Nicotine addiction is not a recognized or a protected medical disability. smokers don't constitute a class, so they don't have any class protections. And as I've said a couple of times before, this is against the nuisance of smoking, not against a person or an act of smoking. So here are the asks for the EAB. One is to refer this to council and take it up with council to get some action on this. And then secondly, I would love to have a couple of people from this group and I'm willing to do this, to join me when we meet with council, if and when we go down that road, to discuss this with them and answer any questions that they may have, if you feel strongly about it. I feel very strongly about it. I think it's a public health imperative. This is for the public good, and nuisances go to the very heart of responsible behavior and respectful behavior. Same reasons why you wouldn't drink and drive, to put somebody else in harm's way, or why you'd wear a mask to protect somebody else. It's pretty much along the same lines. I'm just calling out Mike Van Buren and Andy, since you've given me your comments on the memo, but please don't feel like you have to. Would be great to have somebody raise your hand or two if you feel comfortable. But I think this is a moment, having worked on this for about 6 or so months and having lived through a difficult time in the pandemic, this is a good time to take this up. So Bill, I believe I've been at pretty much 12 or so minutes. Why don't we open it up for feedback?
Yep. Brandon, could you unmute Andy? I think wanted to say something.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, so let me, do I have to
No,
unmute?
no. Agam, leave your PowerPoint up. Brandon's going to take care of that.
Okay.
Could you maybe go back up to the second slide or two?
So slide. Okay, you tell me if this is the right one.
Next one. Oh, maybe it was the second one, the one just before that. You mentioned orally, you said something about third-hand smoke, but you don't have any real references to it. Do you?
Yeah, Bill, third-hand smokes more of a private nuisance than a public nuisance. It's a little bit outside the scope, so I didn't want to dilute the message.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I just thought if
we're talking, we're talking of a public health nuisance. A third-hand smoke's a private nuisance where if you have a family member smoking and if you have a child inside, and the cigarette smoke odor coming from your sofa cover, for example, that's a health hazard. That's third-hand smoke. So a little bit outside scope here.
No, that's fine. Go ahead, Andy.
Right. So I had encouraged the adding, and I guess it was apartments. I just wonder if we're really talking about the health issue of the smoke going from one dwelling to another. If you want to make it more generic and state, multi-family residence or multi-dwelling unit, and if you think that being that generic could be problematic. And this is just, an EAB, something to take to the council with, but I guess I wonder what the feedback would be, and I wonder if the ordinance or whatever they do pass gets much more nuanced than being straightforward like this, being more, allowing some exclusions based on certain circumstances or something like that, based on feedback they're going to get.
Yeah, exactly, Andy. So great point, because it gets into the very heart of the details, right? So let me explain that it's really cigarette smoke in and around somebody's house. Now, if you see on this slide at the bottom, I'm just going to highlight, I've used the term multifamily dwellings because it goes to the heart of a public nuisance where, cigarette smoke could easily in a drifting manner impact multiple units, and then get into those units from the outside if it was a townhouse. And Bill, you live in a townhouse, I think I do too, so we could relate to that. And if you have an apartment, you could get the same harmful effect through either the drywall or the HVAC or through the balcony or through the front door. Now, it's hard to tease out. I actually didn't have apartments to begin, in the beginning, thinking that apartments are rentals and condos and townhomes are on ownership. So that's a little bit more narrow in scope. But then I thought about this and I said, if it's a public health need and if it's multi-family dwellings, and Andy, if you're telling me it makes sense to include apartments, then let's go ahead and do it, because ultimately it's for the citizens. And so that's what got me to put the apartments in, because it's the same problem. It's just it's just slightly different. It's just not ownership. It's just a rental. But that's where it's at.
Yeah, I guess that, like us to propose what makes sense and fits with the concerns that we have. And, if council, like I said, has nuances, has edits that they end up making either on their own opinions or, based on public feedback, then, that'll happen. But, I
So
again,
yeah,
just having a good, consistent statement on what we think is the concern.
yeah. So what's your suggestion, Andy? Can you suggest an edit or a change, or you can even send it to me later? Very happy to build that in.
Just if I mean, right, like you say right there, you've got multi-family dwellings. So if if it's anywhere, the residences are closely situated in that the smoke can move from one space to another, then I think that's the concern, and we should be inclusive of all those. So just where you've specifically said condos, townhouses, apartments, maybe list those as examples versus and be more generic in terms of clearly stating multifamily dwellings is really the recommendation.
Yeah, we could, or we could take the opposite approach where you could have the council or the solicitor suggest exclusions from being specific or having a specific starting point. Yeah, I'm fine either way. I just think that, when you spell out townhomes, condos, and apartments, it really gives you an idea of the scope, which is pretty narrow. Multifamily dwellings, people may not connect it with these three settings that we can think of.
So if you said multi-family dwellings, examples, townhomes, condos, and apartments, would that kind of cover help kind of make it generic?
Yeah, I think it would. It would make it would take away the specificity, and absolutely, I think it'd make it more generic. Personally, I like the specificity in the title because it just focuses the mind on three specific scenarios.
Oh, I see. Because your title page, slide 2, is where you actually defined it, right?
Yeah.
So Debbie needs to be unmuted, Brendan.
Yep.
Yeah, so Debbie, I do have to say, I did read your email a little bit late, though, just before the meeting. I will check that link. Thanks for looking into it.
Yeah, there was one link that I couldn't access, but you know what? On your 18-page document, your PDF, on page 3, where you have the cities with the examples, Pasadena, San Rafael, Culver City, you do mention multifamily units, multi-unit housing, multifamily buildings, including, and like Redwood City says, multifamily buildings with 2 or more attached units to be smoke-free, including duplexes, We even have duplexes like in Conshohocken that might even, you want to include in that too. Apartment buildings, condominiums, and senior and assisted living facilities, long-term care facilities. They probably don't have smoking anyway, but who knows? Anyway, I just wanted to point that out, that you have, if you make it more generic, and then you can put examples or.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thanks. So Debbie, I will make sure the link works. And I believe when I took the references, I took the title verbatim. So in other words, I didn't paraphrase the reference, but I'll double check. I just wanted to use the same words
Yeah.
that those munis or cities put out. So good point though. You can have duplexes and
Yeah, so they, like Redwood City has the multifamily buildings, and then they gave several examples that we might want to make it generic and then put including, and then there's things that we didn't really consider there in your PowerPoint. So is this PowerPoint is what would be submitted to council? Is that how that works? Not the 18-page PDF?
I'll just defer to all of you in the EAB, whatever makes more sense. I think both, the PowerPoints, a 10-minute, real quick, laser-focused walkthrough through the issue. The memo is a little bit long form with the references spelled out. So I think both could be useful. But Bill, I think, and I'll defer to the team.
Mm-hmm.
I
It's
think
good if they have that ahead of time before the day of the presentation, if that's how it works.
Yeah,
So
I
that
was
way they can look into all of those references that you've listed, which was very well put together, I thought.
Yeah, I think you're right, Debbie. The giving them as much information with as much lead time as possible would be excellent. I think this PowerPoint can be useful for walking through the discussion with them in person, but also I think there's enough material here that it'd be good if they saw the PowerPoint even before the meeting, just so that they could be mentally prepared. And if they had any specific questions, then it helps them, feel ready to talk to you at the meeting about it or ask questions.
Black softcover book. Tell mommy to give it to me. Black softcover book.
So yeah, I think it's a great.
Yeah, Bill. Just one more point, if you'll allow me. May I? Just one more point on this before I forget.
Yep.
So when you sent out the agenda, I think you put in a bullet point about a potential legislation that's being discussed in Harrisburg, sponsored by Pittsburgh Democrat. I think Franken. I forget. And you put a link to a news article from patch.com. Do you recall that on
Yes.
the agenda? Yes, I just want to clarify one thing. We have the PA Clean Indoor Air Act from 2008. It's got a lot of loopholes in it. And there is legislation in the committee now, it's still at the committee stage, where the Pittsburgh Democrat, I'm just trying to remember his name. I think it's Dan Frankel, if I'm not mistaken.
That's in the article.
Yeah, so he introduced the bill into the House. It's in the committee. Now, the article that you linked to says that if it actually made its way through and became law, it would prohibit smoking in virtually every indoor space. That is incorrect. That bill, so I've actually spoken with Dan Frankel's office 2 times, back in Feb, a little bit more recently, just to get a clearer sense of what's in scope. And that's basically a bill to fill in the gaps from the 2008 Air Act, Indoor Air Act. So what's in scope is mainly public spaces, bars, restaurants, and employee workspaces. So townhomes, condos, and apartments
Still
are
aren't.
explicitly out of scope, and they even didn't know it, because they did focus on private property like employee workspaces, even parking lots of casinos, restaurant and bars, which right now class 1 cities like Philadelphia ban anyway. But I think it's a big gap that the townhome, condos, apartments, the multifamily dwellings got completely missed. So now our representative is, probably Matt Bradford. He's not a co-sponsor, but because of the current pandemic, this thing is just in committee. The Republicans are a majority, and this is not high on their priority. So they're not going to put this to vote anytime soon. I just wanted to put it out there that what we're doing is very complementary to what's even being considered in Harrisburg, just so that you guys know.
Would it be worth at least having some comment on that so that if the council ever heard about a state bill, they wouldn't be blindsided, and you could say, there is a hopefully future proposal and this will be complementary. I think it'd be good to just make sure you leave no stone uncovered.
Yeah, so I would leave that for a voiceover. Karen knows about it. She and I have discussed it. I think in fact she was even going to check with state rep, but I'd probably just leave it for a voiceover, Bill, if it came up, or we could just add that little bit of info if needed.
Sure.
Let me see if I covered everything. I think that's about it. The only other thing I'll add is I'd say a week ago, Pennsylvania, essentially this might be by executive order, where they banned smoking in casinos because of the pandemic. It's unheard of. Casinos used to be the one place where people used to be able to smoke, but they banned it. So the tide is really moving on this. Public consciousness is coming up, and people recognize that we've got to protect citizens from involuntary exposure.
Yeah, sorry, Mike. Go ahead.
One thing I was going to add was, you had a question about whether we should make a new ordinance for whether we should just keep the current one. My thought is possibly add a bullet point to the current one. I think if we just keep the current one just the way it is and rely on that, then it depends on who's in power and how it's enforced. So, I mean, in the current council or the current police chief could be, we can do that. But then if somebody else comes in power, then they may interpret it a different way. So I think it's always good to have something specific if that's what we want.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, great point, Mike. There could be variability in how it's interpreted and implemented. Yeah.
So what we could do is take the current ordinance and then possibly add a bullet point saying examples of nuisances include and secondhand smoke, and we can write that language or get help with writing that language from the solicitor.
Yep, I think so. I think, why don't I just put a bullet point to capture that point, Mike? Just suggest adding a bullet point under the existing ordinance to recognize this as a nuisance or something, or some language that the solicitor, legal verbiage that he can draft and put in. So Bill, back to you, just advice on how you want to take this up and, at the EAB, and then any takers or anybody interested in joining me at some point if we get in front of the council at a workshop to put this in front of them.
So yeah, I think this is a great start of a presentation. I think maybe we could look at tuning some of the language a little bit. I'm thinking it's a little dense in terms of just content per slide. I'm wondering if stretching it out, even though it'd make more slides, you could still move it through it as quickly, but because it would be more readable on the screen, because I know even if they're going to get to read it ahead of time, there's going to be other people in the room. And so your presentation isn't only just to the people who have already read it, but anyone else who might be there. So I would just suggest that maybe we consider making the fonts a little bigger and just so people can read it if they want to.
Thanks. That's a good suggestion. Thank you. Yeah, I'll do that.
So I think if you're willing to hold, I know you've been waiting a long time for this. I'd just like to get Karen in the room with us to make sure we can answer her concerns and her thoughts on how the rest of the council is going to react. So, you know, I hate to keep holding you off, but I just would love to have her input here so we can understand how she thinks the council is going to react.
Yeah.
If she says things that are something we should tune the presentation, you know, then we'll have time to make it even more concise or precise and convincing. And then you won't go into the workshop and get shot down because you'll be able to make the best presentation possible.
Yeah. So Bill, how would it work? You know, Karen's input, of course, would be crucial to strengthen this or to just proactively address anything that she may think may come up. But, you know, is that better done at a later point once we motion appropriately within the EAB? Or are you waiting for a feedback even before we motion? So if she says there's not much interest, then we don't even motion and, you know, it just gets, you know, it's essentially done at this point.
So I think it would still probably be good to have her input so that we could say that we heard her and then we motion it forward, rather than trying to motion it forward without getting her input. That's my only thought. Not that there's a right way to do this, but I'm just thinking it would be good to have her input and then a fine tunement of the presentation, so that we could make sure that the motion includes everybody's input. That's my only thought on that.
Okay.
I have a question. Agam, when did you first present this to us? In January, or was it before that?
It was last year, November, I think, November or December.
And Karen, I don't see Karen had attended in January. At least I didn't have her on there. She was
She's
there
been-
in February, but I don't think we covered this in February, did we?
So she's been on at least a couple of meetings where we've discussed this.
Yeah.
I know the first meeting and maybe the second or the third meeting. So she's very well aware. And she, you know, she's actually a supporter. I mean, she completely believes in the public health imperative or something like this. So
Yeah, I thought she's been present at least once when you covered this.
yeah,
I know we talked about it a couple times.
oh yeah, couple times at least, couple times, yeah, at least.
What would be the reason for them to not want to do this?
Yeah. What would be the reason?
I think being
let-
the first East Coast municipality to stick their neck out, you know, doing something that no one else has ever done besides California. That's Karen's only concern. Is sometimes munis are a little bit, they like to have neighbors that have done it, you know, or see a precedent. They don't want to necessarily be the precedent setter. So it just depends on how courageous our people are.
Oh, I guess I didn't realize we'd be the first.
So in Pennsylvania, so I'll just add to Bill's comment. I think there's also the hesitation with, hey, you know, with any ordinance, really it needs to be worded so carefully that it's bulletproof. It can withstand litigation, because that's, you know, because litigation, then you have to defend based on taxpayers' money, and no muni likes to do that. You know, but of course, in this case, you know, there's just the awareness that, you know, litigation's very low risk. So I think that needs to come from the solicitor, that there's just the awareness piece. Personally, I can't think of a better topic that makes complete logic based on, you know, medical, legal,
Yeah,
financial.
it's a no-brainer pretty much, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, and there's also, you know, so if you talk to Harrisburg, why, you know, you can ask the question, why wouldn't Republicans give this priority? There are Republicans opposed to it. You know, it's a fact. I've heard this from Dan Frankel's office. It's just to do with liberty and, hey, you know, if I want to smoke, I can smoke. I think people just miss the nuance of personal responsibility that that comes with an exercise of liberty that, the whole thing that nuisance rests on.
Yep.
So that's
If I want
that's
to
the
stand in
awareness.
traffic, I'll stand in traffic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's exactly the awareness piece. I think people are making dent on it though. Lots of and Bill, even though there's no precedent, I think this is such a strong case that you almost want to be the person making the first move if you could, because it's the right thing to do. Once of course we put it through the due process, it's almost an opportunity in my mind.
I like that sentence about it being the right thing to do. So I think that kind of statement, capturing that on a slide would be good, just because you're really setting a moral precedent here. So in health, I think you want to focus on the protection of the public's health, and it's the right thing to do, even though we're the first.
Just like the pandemic, the right thing to do.
Yeah, this pandemic has really raised this topic.
Yeah,
You know,
social responsibility.
Absolutely. I mean, it is exactly the heart of it that, you're free to do what you want within limits. Now, if you're living in a community, and these are all planned communities legally under Pennsylvania nonprofit law, especially townhomes and condos, you are subject to significant use restrictions, which you may not be subject to if you had your 10-acre private property, single family dwelling. So, that comes with restrictions, that you respect your neighbors, and, lots of examples where you are restricted, just like you can't get your dog off leash and you've got to pick up poop and all of that, so yeah, pretty much a no-brainer, but I think we've got to get to that point following the right process. Yeah, I think it's an opportunity. It might be one of the things for us as an EAB, if it goes through, a pretty nice accomplishment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's a great proposal. So how do you feel about changing any of the slides, Agam? I know there's a lot of work, but
Yeah, let me work on it, Bill. I've got a few points I've noted. I'm going to fine tune them, and why don't I circulate the slides to the team again, and then I'll just leave it to you to figure out the mechanics of putting it on the floor, voting, debating, closing it, and all of that.
yeah. So once you get the next version of this, then we can, because Karen will be copied and Rick will be copied, we can talk to her, just get her feedback, and then see if there's any more tuning we need to do. I guess, in terms of us getting back together again, I know we usually take August off, and then, so normally we would have tried to, meet again in September, but I hate to keep putting this off. So I guess how many of us are willing to do the third Tuesday in August, or do we want to postpone this till September?
I'm okay with August. We've been off for so long. I forgot what y'all look like.
Yeah, I'm okay with August, Bill. I do see that a long time's elapsed, and for various reasons. If it works for folks, if we can have a Zoom meeting, and if we can run a proper motion via Zoom, which I think we could if the council's doing it anyway, then we can make it a short and quick meeting. We don't have to have extensive debate unless people have questions.
All right, that sounds good. Why don't we try that? Andy, I just want to make sure we captured your comment there. I know you'll get a chance to review the slide, but do you think his mention of multi-unit is sufficient, or you'd like it to be clarified a little more?
I'd probably extend the use of multi-unit dwellings, or whatever the exact term you want to be, and then use a more specific townhomes, etc., as an example. I mean, you can make that nice and bold so you can help, like you were saying, try to clarify, what is the scope here. But
Yeah.
I kind of try to do a little bit of a scrub on how many times you say that versus a multifamily or
That
multi-unit.
Sounds good, Andy. So maybe if it works for you, when I circulate the slides, once I've worked on them, you can just give me that feedback or make the change, and then I'll just accept it. If that, is that okay?
Sounds good.
Yep. So we can incorporate that. Awesome. Thanks.
So thanks, Agam, for putting this together. I think it's really coming together really well. So great work.
No, it's a pleasure. Thanks. And just FYI, I will be deleting the trivia slide because by that time we'll be in cooler weather. So.
Well, it's always good to remind everyone every chance we get.
Yep. Let's do something big and bold. Absolutely.
Mhm. Nice work, Agam. I think that it's pretty impressive, the research you've done and all.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Debbie. Thanks. I think it's just a very compelling case. I feel very strongly about it. And this whole pandemic with people with underlying respiratory tract infections, how they're more susceptible with the way the virus ravages the lungs,
Yeah.
just makes it a lot more compelling. I mean, imagine if everybody was sheltering at home and your neighbor was just blowing smoke all the time. I mean, it'd be so difficult to be at home and you can't even go anywhere.
And that's the thing. People were locked down, or not locked down, in their homes much more.
Yeah.
And if they're consistently smoking, that's got to be awful.
Yeah.
Good. So thanks. So I guess I wanted to just have a quick, since we haven't met since February, and that was when we saw the presentation from Mike Ewall on incineration versus landfill, zero waste. Did anybody have any reflections after that meeting that they wanted to have a chance to share? I just want to make sure we circle back and don't forget the message out of that that session.
I still have the this is the SD card that I just looked for before the meeting, that where I recorded everything. So yeah, I completely forgot about that until I saw the meeting notes and stuff come out, and I was like, oh yeah, that's right. So I will go through this at some point because I know he wanted to look at it before we somehow shared it with anyone else. So I'll put it on my list of things to do.
And was that really I thought we were really recording it for Debbie's purpose.
Oh, okay. Well, if it's just Debbie, then I mean she can watch
No, I
it
was
unfiltered.
No, I ended up coming to the meeting because my trip got moved to the following week. So
Oh, was it
I
someone
made
else
it,
then?
But
Me.
I thought
Oh, was it?
Oh, it's
okay.
Mike. I'm sorry, Mike.
Mike.
Yeah, Mike wanted to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he's running the zero waste task force. So I think it'd be good if you could share it with just Mike. You don't need to give it to anybody else.
Oh, yeah, I can leave it on my mailbox one day. You can come pick it up over here.
Okay.
Yeah.
He'll jog by and get
Yeah,
it.
he'll ride his bike by.
So just for a brief review for Mike's benefit,
Yeah, sorry about that.
Mike, did you have any reaction to that presentation since you know a little bit about these plants?
I mean, I knew before we saw it that he was going to be very much on the one side of things, and I don't see how landfills are far and away the best choice, like he kind of was talking about. He seems to have done a lot of research supporting that, but I'm sure you can find a bunch of other stuff saying the opposite. So I certainly appreciate all the stuff he seemed to have done all over the East Coast to close some of these places, but I'm not sure if it's 100% the right thing to do. So I'm still split, and I think I'll always be that way. So, yeah. So I don't know what the rest of you thought about it, but that was my opinion of it.
It is a really hard case to make that you should just send everything to landfill because that's going to pollute the groundwater
Yeah, there's other stuff to deal with that. Yeah.
and the transportation. Even though he pointed out that the truck transportation is minimal compared to the rest of the
Right.
incineration going on, but it is kind of a hard choice. I guess the question, I don't know where the township lies because they were going to get that environmental engineer or lawyer
Yeah,
involved.
whatever happened to that?
Yeah, I haven't heard anything.
It's like a big
I don't know.
secret.
I don't know. We heard they hired someone, but that was the last we really heard about it, right?
Well, that was like 6 or 8 months ago.
Yeah,
I feel
yeah,
like it's crazy.
yeah.
It's like it's a big mystery.
Yeah, and I haven't been really keeping up with what's going on at least in the Covanta Facebook group. So
Same.
I don't know if things have been going well since we all chatted last, or things have been going incredibly poorly. I'm not sure. So I don't know.
I haven't watched either. I do have a question, Bill, that I know that you talked to Luann and in White Marsh, and one of the things that Mike Ewell said was that White Marsh agreed to pay 28% more, $58.45, to not send trash to Covanta and have Mascaro take trash to their own landfill. And Plymouth Township pays $58.50 to go to incineration. So do we know, like, what would the cost difference be if we were to not send it to Covanta? And I know it's close and it's in the backyard, but was that ever compared? Or what did White Marsh, like, did they do a cost analysis and not, you know what I'm saying? Like, what was their,
Yeah, Debbie, I guess I hadn't looked at that detail that you just mentioned. I didn't realize that their landfill cost now matches our Covanta cost. I guess I had always thought that we were getting a deal by going to Covanta, so I never paid attention to that. So good eye, and maybe that's something we do need to pursue. If the township is going to reconsider their contract, I think what they do, just extend it a year or two before they made their decision. So they either have to make another decision by the end of this year or next year as to how much they're going to extend with Covanta. So maybe we can get that information. I can ask Karen just to see if she can tell us when it's next being discussed. I just have a feeling that with COVID and everything else going on with the township, they probably have put a lot of stuff on hold.
Covanta did have a big shutdown in June, and then it took them a while to get it back up. I don't know if you guys saw that. And
I didn't see that.
so, yeah, and kept on trying to restart it, and it took several days to restart it.
But it was a planned shutdown, or
It was not a planned shutdown.
Oh.
And now this is Mike Ewell talking on here on the Facebook page, but sounds like they had waste pile fires, and they've had that at other Covanta plants also. And those waste pile fires, of course, they're not measuring anything that's being emitted at that time.
And is that, Mike, does that just mean those kind of piles are the input? I mean, they just stack stuff and it catches on fire?
I would not know that specific.
it's just in that. Wait, did you take a tour of that place, Bill, or no?
No, I missed it. I haven't had a chance to get there.
Good too.
Yeah, I mean, they basically, back the trucks in this big warehouse kind of looking place. And then, there's obviously doors for trucks to get in, and there's doors for people to get inside too. But everything that gets pulled, all the air that comes there gets pulled through the what's it called? The incinerator. But if it's tripped, I don't know if that still runs or not. So it's definitely indoors, but I couldn't imagine how gross that would be to be stuck in there. Because I mean, there's people right above where all the garbage pile sits. So I don't know how they do that. But
So I think maybe just for the notes, Debbie, we could just say we'll follow up with Karen to find out, what the township's current thoughts are on incineration or Covanta versus other options.
Karen B.
Yeah, Karen B. I'll call her. And then I guess the other piece of that, Mike, I know it kind of everything got put on hold, but we were talking about zero waste task force. We did get approval from council to have that form. So I don't know if that's something you want to pursue virtually, could be done via Zoom meetings, or just wait until everything, settles down again.
I think the township would probably want us to wait. I mean, I'd be willing to, but I mean, we can certainly ask them if there's if we can do it now, but I kind of doubt they would want to.
Yeah, yeah, I have a feeling there's so much else going on. So in terms of any other points to this subject area, do we want to bring this back on the agenda in the fall? Or are we just going to kind of let it sit in the background as old business?
What part, Bill? I'm sorry, I was
Yeah,
typing fast. Which-
the 3 points we had for the Mike Ewell section, that we'll just move that all to old business. And we won't make this an agenda item for a while
The
unless,
zero waste part?
well, all three topics, yeah, but yeah, that would be included in that. So I
Yeah.
think
I'm
that's,
good with that in the fall.
yep, we can bring it back in the fall, see whether we get more capacity with the township.
While you're waiting, it's, Mike V, are you working on, I guess, plans or thoughts on what that zero waste task force will do, or?
To be honest, I haven't visited it since we last talked about it. So,
Mm.
but if anybody wants to have a conversation with me about it, I'd be more than happy to get on Zoom or on the phone with any of you to kind of get your ideas.
I have a question. I'd be interested in joining you, Mike, on that. Um, Bill, I don't know when this started, maybe in February, the Wagner Institute in Philadelphia offered a class. Do you remember on
Oh, yeah.
recycling realities?
Weren't you going?
I did, and luckily they did it virtually, so it worked out for every Tuesday night in the month of April. So
Wow.
I have all the PowerPoint slides, and it was almost like doom and gloom. It felt like I just felt so depressed after the end. I mean, he went into aluminum and glass and even chemicals, but I just felt like, oh my gosh, we're really doing a terrible job with recycling. So I feel strongly that we should just somehow like find a task force to help educate the community about what just basic recycling. And I had gone to Lower Gwynedd, and there was somebody there that was speaking. I think I remember me telling you that there was somebody there on recycling, and but I think it would be good to bring in Chris Lasciavo, that's in charge of the recycling there at Plymouth Township, because I think that falls under his umbrella. And
Yes.
I think it would be good to get him as, on this zero waste team, so he can help, put our heads together. I think he'd be a good person to put on this task force.
He absolutely would be. And I actually had just written myself a note. What I can do before our next meeting is reach out to him, see if he can join us on a meeting. But I also like to I used to get the recycling and yard waste and the trash numbers from him. And he keeps yearly updates on that information. So it'd be good to see, what percentage of our trash is recycled or, yard
Yeah.
waste and things like that. And I can share that with the group next time, so we can at least have it
Good.
be part of our discussion.
So is it true that any of the recycling that's taken to Gavanna is actually incinerated?
What'd you say? Is it true?
There is no recycling via Gavanna, is there?
No, it's burning.
Hmm.
Well, they send it to a different place for recycling.
So I was just curious about these private haulers, whether, as Debbie said, there's no market for some of these materials. Is the township diverting some of that stuff that they collected back to Gavanna, or are they still all taking it to their recycling center? Maybe that's something good we could ask Chris Lasciavo.
Yeah.
Because we kind of have this, we're a planned development, our townhomes here, and one of our board members claimed they noticed that the truck went around twice, and it looked like the same truck, and he thought that they were putting the recycling in with the trash. So So I wonder how many of these haulers are actually doing the right thing, you know?
Do they mean township trucks, Bill?
No, this was, we're a private community.
Oh,
We have our own hauler. So I think it's called Whitehall. Is that one? Whitetail or Whitehall? Anyway, so yeah, I think you're right. If the recycling market is all kind of topsy-turvy, you wonder what are people doing with recycling materials?
we do a terrible job. I mean, as a country, people are all scrambling because of the China not taking our trash, and like basically plastics 1 and 2 are really the only thing that's really recyclable. And there's not a good, what's the word I want to say? Not a lot of money. Like it's almost like a net cost. It's, and unfortunately, like you put it all in the trash, and that's what people I think are just giving up because there's mixed messages again. I can share the PowerPoint slides with y'all. Do you want that, Mike? I can send that to you. But I just think that I'm kind of passionate about it. I mean, to take a class on recycling, I'm kind of a nerd, I guess, but I thought it was pretty interesting that there's a lot of people that have a lot of resources out there, but nobody has, it's just not disseminated and communicated very well.
COVID-19 has also had an effect, at least on our family. I mean, if we go to Giant and it's very difficult to use our reusable bags. We have to bag them ourselves, which when you got $250 worth of groceries,
Yeah,
it's hard to bag them myself. And then I used to use the bulk bins, but they're closed, understandably, because we obviously don't want to spread COVID-19 anymore. So
what did you do?
I use bulk bins like at Whole Foods,
Oh, right.
almonds, like all the nuts we would buy.
Yeah.
Or I would even go to Weaver's Way in Ambler. I haven't been to Weaver's Way, honestly, since COVID-19 hit us.
I'm going a little crazy seeing used gloves and masks all over the ground. That just drives me insane. And as much as I want to pick them up, I'll have to put on a glove to pick them all up.
It's
But like much more plastic than before. And I feel like we're regressing because of COVID, which is a shame.
And takeout, obviously, takeout from restaurants.
Yep. All those containers. Yep.
Well, and because the price of oil tanked when all this started happening,
Yeah.
the price of plastic feedstocks are incredibly cheap.
Yeah.
So it's only going to hurt recycling. There's even less money now than there was 6 months ago.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. The price of oil, but we'll see.
We're digging ourselves into a plastic hole, aren't we?
I
Yeah.
know. We're going to
Yeah.
drown in plastic.
Yeah.
Well, good to keep that conversation going. I know Westchester had instituted or proposed a plastic ban, and I can't remember which one. Was it just bags or utensils? But then the state had put a moratorium on any local ordinances for a year. So I think that was supposed to go until this July this year. So it was a year ago that they said, let's put a moratorium on anybody implementing ordinances. So I'll try to find out whether Westchester has been able to re-enable that or when they see that coming. Because I think, if at least we can make a statement for it, that could also provide some support for, helping people pay attention to what they're purchasing and using. So good. Debbie, I noticed that you had a Facebook site put out there.
Yes. I'm glad you read that.
Do you mind? Could you share? Can you show us around the site?
I don't know how to share a screen, but
If you go over your Zoom, you see at the bottom there's a green button.
yeah, let me find it. I thought I had it pulled up here. Hold on just a minute. Here it is.
I just sent someone a message who lives in Westchester if they ban plastic bags. So we'll see what he says.
Good, thanks.
Okay, so I think I have share screen.
And then you pick the screen you want to share. Yep, there you go.
Okay, so can you see it?
Yep, just came
All
up.
right. So government, you go to the home page, go to government, citizen boards, environmental advisory board. And thanks to Brandon for helping me do this.
Yeah,
He's
thank you,
the-
Brandon.
Hopefully it looks okay.
Yeah, it's much better. So the names are all updated finally. Even Carolyn was added, and I don't even know if I did that or Bill might have sent that in. But anyway, our names are all there. The only other part that I worked with Brandon on was the meeting minutes. So you click on that link, but it takes you to documents, which you can also get from this tab across the top. Then you go to citizen boards, go to environmental advisory board, and then there's all the years, and I can't do a vouch for anything before 2019, before I got here. But if you go to 2019, you can see that the only one that we're missing is May. But everything else is in there. And I have to send him January, and once we approve February, they'll be in here. And he put the green, Go Green Awards. I think
Nice.
it's one PDF, I think, that they're all together. There's like 5 or 6
Yep, nice.
all together. So
Wow.
that's as far as we got.
That's very cool. Did you have any proposals for any other changes, or had we queued up anything else?
I have not, but I do want to go back to our EAB, like our page. I thought this would be a great place that I was brainstorming, and I haven't gotten there yet, but doing more, like once we work with maybe Chris Lasciavo and do more with recycling information and put that here. I
Yep.
don't know if this even has, but these are kind of old, and I don't even know if it's still, I guess the Dirty Dozen is still there, but I just think updating this a little bit more. And I wanted to put spotted lanternfly resources in
Oh,
here.
yeah, that'd be great to add.
Oh my God, they're all over the place. And so I think people probably know by now maybe where to find that information, but maybe not. But I thought about adding a link here for the spotted lanternflies. I haven't even looked at all of these. But does anybody else have a suggestion that we could expand on our page here?
Well, we were just talking about the Facebook link. Can you put that on this?
Yeah, hold on. I'll show you that too. So this is the Facebook page. I don't know what that is. So we don't have a banner yet. This is still in work, I should say. So I'll have to work with Brandon on putting material on here. So here's my thoughts. The first thing I wanted to put was the Ready for 100, because that was like last April. The resolution adoption last April. Tree planting that we did in November. More information about spotted lanternflies. And then we could put, if we have a new Go Green Award for a new business, we could put something there. Anybody else have suggestions to add content here would be great. I don't want to impede on the Covanta group.
No, this looks great, Debbie. And just back from the webpage you were on, do we have a link to this, to the environmental board? Could we add a link to the environmental board when it's built out?
What do you mean?
So
To where?
from somewhere here,
Uh-huh.
just have a link to our Facebook site.
Oh, sure. Yep.
That looks good. So yeah, we can all contribute to ideas as we grow. Keep that in mind as we think of things that we might want to post and communicate. Very good. Thanks for setting that up, and thanks, Brandon. Good
Yeah,
work.
thank you, Brandon.
You're welcome.
So are you actually in the building there at the township building?
Yeah.
Wow, man.
Yeah, just me.
I hate to have you just be there just to support us, man. No wonder.
It's all good. It's quiet.
Mhm.
How far do you live from there?
About 45 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
Where are you coming up from?
Lower Makefield Township, up kind of close to Jersey. Delaware
Yeah.
River.
Ah,
Bucks County, man.
Yeah, I love Bucks County.
That's
wow.
good. So the last topic was just the Ready for 100. Westchester, Paula Klein is one of the leaders out there, and she came up with this idea of creating this multiple week, 10 to 12 week programs that's going to start August to allow municipalities to start working on their draft energy transition plan. So each of the 12 weeks, she's going to have a workshop meeting, and Andy and I volunteered to lead this for Plymouth, and then we got approval from the council to participate. It's a $50 fee the township paid, and that they'll release their electric bills. So this energy transition plan is really going to focus on electricity primarily, which the Villanova students really did a lot of work on that in the fall. So we've got a pretty good head start. And in fact, Matt Peterson also volunteered as much time as he can allow, but he's working on his master's project next till the end of the year. So he thinks that he wants his master's project to be somewhat kind of surrounding this topic of, enabling renewable energy or entrepreneurship. So I guess he's still looking for a kind of a thesis or a project idea. So, Mike or Andy, if you guys have any suggestions for him in the area of renewable entrepreneurship or others, I think he's just kind of trying to get a handle on what he wants to do, and he hasn't really zeroed in yet. But anyway, so that's kind of where we are. So we sent a survey to Rick Carbo to get us some information about the electric accounts and how they handle purchasing, whether they've thought about electric vehicles, et cetera. So it's just kind of hopefully questions that'll trigger their thinking. So that's where we are there. Separately, I did run across the CoStars, the state group that does municipal procurement. So every municipality can be a member of this. And the CoStars group puts out these requests for proposals, and they get these vendors across the state that are willing to offer discounts or good values for services and products. So they've got one for electricity procurement, and then they just started one recently in the spring on hybrid and electric vehicles. Not a lot of people have taken advantage of these yet, but the hope is that that'll grow as municipalities gain interest in it. So one of the projects the CoStars group put together was a RFQ to get solar developers so that we could hopefully get multi-municipal power purchase agreements organized. So we'll see whether that pans out into anything going forward. Separately, there was a Zoom call just yesterday with Haverford Township, and they're trying to come up with a way to do community funded solar. So they want to put solar on their community building and some other municipal buildings, but they're looking to help the community be investors to kind of fund that development so they can buy the solar panels, get them installed, and then the investors reap the rewards rather than paying a developer, a solar developer to do that for them. So that's kind of what they're thinking about to help get that going. So that's what we got going for renewables. So hopefully by the end of October, we'll have a draft plan that we can present to council for consider adoption. It doesn't make any commitments. It just sets kind of goals and milestones. And then hopefully we'll still reach our goal of 2035 for 100% clean renewable electricity.
I have a question, Bill. So this is for you and Andy to work on an energy transition plan, but the council still has yet to approve the actual task force to assist. So you're not considered a task force. You're just a EAB members that they are supporting.
Yeah, we're kind of the two lone volunteers that are drafted to, we volunteered, we weren't drafted, we volunteered to do this for the township. So I think it would be nice if we could get some public involved, but I just have a feeling that's gonna probably have to hold off. So, we could probably get this draft plan together by the end of October, present it to council, say, hey, we'd like to get community involvement, and then maybe take it to the next level to see if we can get, community support. So we'll see how it goes. So, I'll find out if Karen's available for the August meeting, ask if we can get another Zoom call, and then we'll circulate the PowerPoint and take comments via email. I guess since Debbie just sent out the updated minutes for February, if we could get three or, three approvals, maybe just, I think 3 approvals will be enough. So via email, you could just do that by the end of the week to approve those minutes, and then she can get them posted. So thanks, everyone. It's good.
Hold on, is the next meeting Tuesday, August 18th via Zoom? Is that the?
So we'll shoot for that. I'll ask for permission at the August council meeting workshop, and if Brandon's available, I don't know, Brandon, if that's not a good date for you.
No, it should be good. What's the date again?
Tuesday, August 18th?
Yeah, it should be good. Yeah.
Okay,
Thank
well,
you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
appreciate
of course.
your support. Have you had to do this for anyone else other than council?
No, there's been like all these other citizen boards, like zoning hearing board and
Sewer
safety
boards.
committees and things like that. So
Why were we not able to do this sooner is what I'd like to know.
yeah, I think it's nice. It seems like a lot of people like the Zoom instead of having to like meet together and.
Right.
Yeah.
We should have been able to do this since March, but anyway.
Yeah, and then also being able to share it online and having people be able to watch it online after the fact
Yeah.
Yeah,
seems to be
that's a good-
effective.
That is good. Well, I appreciate your support, and
Yeah, anytime.
we'll keep in touch, everyone. Thanks for everything.
And then
Like
Mike,
I said, I saw the zoning board meeting on the Plymouth website. I didn't see this meeting link.
Wait, I did. I
What
saw
was
it
it?
on the home page today when I was on there.
Okay.
It's right at the very top with the home page. There's online sewer payments. Hold on. And then there's like a Zoom, like video camera. It says Environmental Advisory Board meeting, meeting ID 81947. So
Okay.
yeah, it was there today.
Sorry, I think I checked earlier in the week and I didn't probably look around too much, but I was just wondering, that needed to be publicized, right?
Yeah. Yeah, Karen did.
other
say-
Mike, I'll email you when you want to come pick. You have an SD card reader at home, I'm assuming.
No,
Okay, I have a bunch. I'll give you one.
never used it.
You can grab this video and watch it whenever you want to. Then.
Sounds good.
Okay, great.
Thanks all. Have a great night.
Everyone, stay safe. Talk to you
Hey,
next
guys,
month.
next
Take
time.
care.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Brandon.
Yep, of course. Have a good one.
You too.
Thank you, Brandon.
Yep, no problem. See you guys.
Bye.